Today on the Topping Show, Vivek on Keith Olbermann calling for the Supreme Court to be dissolved after ruling Trump could in fact run for office. Mark Cuban announces he will vote for Biden over Trump. Doritos hires a trans brand ambassador. CNN breaks down after the Supreme Court rules that Trump can run for office. Chicago to change offices to affordable housing and revamp them to attract businesses, maybe. Whole Foods to try small bodega-style stores. And GM to recall about 820,000 trucks due to a tailgate issue. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder released twice today. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's a joke. If you're an IT leader, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part of the podcast, we have Chicago to turn offices into affordable housing. Now this comes to us thanks to Kara Reinhardt, who's an editor at LinkedIn News. And apparently, Chicago is going to be pushing forward with an estimated $1 billion plan to repurpose vacant downtown office buildings amid their commercial real estate crisis. Now it's funny how LinkedIn frames this. They say it's hitting every city across America. Funny. Not really in Texas and Florida. A lot of businesses are moving there from Chicago, places like Chicago. So, yeah, there are a couple overall trends. However, some cities are being hit a lot harder than others for obvious reasons with anyone with a modicum of intelligence. Now, the current mayor, although they run through mayors so much, finding out that they're corrupt, we'll see how long this current mayor of Chicago is. Mayor Brandon Johnson says that redevelopment plans were delayed due to high interest rates, but now has support of him in his office. This was conceived under his predecessor, Lori Lightfoot, who a lot of people would say allegedly is Beetlejuice. I don't want to say that allegedly because they had a striking similarity in their appearance. Now, they say they're going to turn empty office space into affordable housing as well as dining and other amenities. Chicago's central business district has a record vacancy rate last quarter, according to real estate firm Jones Lang Sallee. Now, interestingly enough, a business actually investing in Chicago, which I'm not sure if they're drinking Bud Light, perhaps they're inebriated or they're not sober, but it looks like J.P. Morgan Chase that said they will renovate their Chicago tower, where it has about 7,000 employees, which they say that, quote, the bank's decision is a, quote, vote of confidence on the city's downtown, where the pandemic dealt a staggering blow to the office market and downtown offices that rely on foot traffic, unquote. That according to the Chicago Sun-Times, which, again, businesses aren't leaving in droves from Chicago because the offices aren't as pretty as they used to be. It's because they're enormously high taxes, high regulation, and it's also not a safe place to be and really hasn't been for decades, and yet they keep passing the same rules, laws, and voting the same. Things aren't going to get better anytime soon. Now, anecdotally speaking, I've actually worked with a couple of folks, well, I'm not over there, but I'm working remotely with some people who they actually reside in Chicago, and they'll have people quite literally committing crimes on, I forget what you call it, a little stoop in front of an apartment complex, but they have people committing crimes left and right. Police really don't do much there. Truth be told, Lori Lightfoot actually told them to, let the riots work themselves out. I believe it was during the pandemic lockdowns. And interestingly enough, they actually rerouted the mob from the financial district to housing. So it kind of shows you the mayor's priorities at the time. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, J.P. Morgan Chase also has more money than pretty much any other financial firm I could possibly fathom. They're one of the largest, most well-established banks. Again, they could certainly afford to reinvest that building. I'm pretty shocked that Chase is actually doing that. Now, granted, they have over 100,000 employees all over the globe, but for all that money, it would probably make a lot more sense to, take that office and all those people, just relocate them to a place where, hey, there's no income tax, a lot less burdensome for businesses. So I am shocked that they're actually doing that. Now, in terms of changing the businesses to affordable housing, we'll see if that, statistically speaking, how that works long term in terms of the quality of the housing, what the rates of people moving out of those complexes, and hopefully they can get on their own 2 feet and they're able to rent on their own and maybe buy a house someday. But yeah, and then they're going to turn to restaurants and dining, which, yeah, we'll see about that. It'll be interesting to see what the future is for Chicago, but kind of like the Magic 8 Ball, I can't help but think the outlook would probably still say, not so good. Let me know, would you go to Chicago for a job? where you have to pay absorbent income tax, property tax. You also have the gasoline tax, which is heavily taxed in the state. And then you have all the, I would argue, unconstitutional gun laws as well that disarm civilians while letting the criminals run and roam free, while district attorneys allow them to do whatever crimes they want. Let me know, would you ever go to Chicago for a job? Or would you, if you're a business owner, would you ever open an office or remote site in Chicago? I mean, Lord knows I wouldn't, but I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting business news, you have Whole Foods to try small bodega-style stores. This, as everyone always says, retail is dead, which is a cliche as old as time because of the dawn of e-commerce, but retail is not dead, it is simply evolving. So in this case, it looks like you're going to try to, instead of having the massive conglomerate, the huge footprint real estate that a normal Whole Foods store has, you're going to try for some kind of micro stores. Now, it looks like the typical square foot of a Whole Foods store currently is about 40,000 square feet. That's a heck of a lot of organic produce. And asparagus water, which hilariously they did sell that at one point. Asparagus, raw asparagus in just a jug of water. And it was like $15 or $16 for asparagus water, which I thought was a joker and it's kind of hilarious, but people bought it too. They claim it was an error, they didn't mean to do it, but people bought that for $15, $16 for a jug of water filled with asparagus. Asparagus water. But nevertheless, it's fascinating to see the people who shop there. Now, the new footprint of these little bodega style stores, they're going to be approximately about 14,000 square feet. So less than half the actual footprint of the traditional big Whole Foods markets. Now, they also tested this previously by 365, which, I don't know, in terms of marketing, still doesn't seem like a great brand to me. But I think that's their whole label. I was going to say the Whole Foods whole label. Their store brand item, I believe. Now, of course, Amazon said they're trying to increase their revenue from the grocery business and developing low-price brick-and-mortar chain under Amazon's fresh brand. And granted, Amazon also owns Whole Foods. Now, they also note that the first is going to set to be opened up in New York City before expanding to other cities. So, yeah, will it ever make a profit? That's not a good question, considering the crime rates in New York City and the lack of district attorneys' appetite to actually prosecute them. And what about your employee safety? Kind of begs the question, I mean, financially speaking, it makes sense to have a smaller, more dense store where you can perhaps get a better return on investment because, again, real estate is not cheap. But it'd be interesting to see, I mean, New York City, not the safest place. Businesses on average are more leaving the city. But, maybe it'll work for them. I don't know. Would you ever shop at a Whole Foods little mini bodega? As always, it'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have Doritos hiring a trans brand ambassador who apparently also admitted being attracted towards children inappropriately. Will this help their sales in any way? Well, in some cities, unfortunately, probably yes. Now, this was first reported by End Wokeness on X-Twitter, and Ed Wokeness, it looks like there's a clip of this individual as well. Ed Wokeness says, quote, Doritos just picked Samantha Hudson as a brand ambassador in Spain. Samantha Hudson, admitted to being a pedo, identifies as a non-binary trans girl, openly mocked victims of child abuse, an advocate for annihilating, completely destroying, and abolishing the traditional family, unquote. And this is the person that PepsiCo, which is the owner of Frito-Lay, which Frito-Lay is basically 65% of every salty snack you see in the salty snack aisle is owned by PepsiCo Frito-Lay. And even if you look at the back of it, even if it doesn't say PepsiCo, Google the address that they show for the corporate address. More often than not, it's going to be in Plano, Frisco, Texas area. And then you just do a quick Brave or Google search, go, oh yeah, that is yet another thing owned by this company. Now, this went very viral within the first day, getting 6.1 million views and 32,000 likes. It looks like there's a little clip of this individual. Let me see if I can play it really quick here. Oh, it is in Spanish. I actually should know of it, considering my family's from Cuba, but no fácil. Oh, so that was a commercial. That was a commercial? So it was a biological man with long orange hair, and I forgot. It's not a tank top, but it's the dress that looks like a tank top. And is it really just this person saying a couple words? Ser perfecta no es fácil.
Pero te acabas acostumbrando.
So it looks like Doritos is sponsoring something called Crunch Talks.
No sé nada de eso.
And then
Estoy súper orgullosa
this individual must work out. This individual has biceps.
es de ser totalmente quien yo soy y no oprimirme por avanzarla y a mis hijas.
Let's see here.
Sí,
Es que yo creo que la
claro.
gente...
Very distinct jawline. Now, granted, I've only understood 1 or 2 words to these, but they were roasted to say the least. Perhaps roasted worse than one of the Dorito chips, which gets burnt every once in a while. I wouldn't know. I haven't bought it in decades because I have a little bit of a health nut myself. But and again, apparently, everyone's claiming, well, this tweet, when talking about the children stuff, allegedly this tweet was from 10 plus years ago. Maybe it was a joke. They also have pictures of this individual. I guess their fashion is background, perhaps. And it looks like, yeah, maybe a fashion background. You see this individual wearing those very bizarre fashion trends, which I can't even describe. The mini tank top, which I thought gals did that in the 80s or 90s. But nevertheless, it went viral to say the least. And will this increase their sales? Again, this is currently only running in Spain. Now, the caveat is, if you look at a lot of business, political, and cultural trends, a lot of them origin outside the United States. One of the biggest things being child transitioning. One of the biggest places where it originated from, or especially when it comes to that, as well as decreasing free speech, as well as taking children away when the parents refuse to transition them. Those all started, or many of them started in Canada. Then migrated to California, became all there. Then it's migrating across the United States. So culturally speaking, these things come in waves, and it's definitely a global phenomenon. So if this is happening in Spain now, do they think this will be a way to boost their sales in Canada than in California? I mean, this will certainly increase the sales with people who agree with this spokesperson. But again, with the United States' current demographics and the current shopping trends and people living here, I can't help but think this is going to alienate, as this has many ways become a political issue, probably about half the people on average. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the comments are all going to roast and woke and say, no, we agree with this. We think this individual is brilliant and handsome. Well, no, that's me. But nevertheless, let's go in the comments and find out. Now, Paul Zazupa says, quote, no, Doritos is about to get the Bud Light treatment, unquote, getting 6.4 thousand likes, which is quite a few to say the least. Let's see here. A lot of people bring up Sound of Freedom, which is about ending child trafficking and why so many outlets apparently suppress that news. Joey Manarino says, quote, yeah, because Satan has won, not even trying to pretend anymore. Glad I don't eat shitty processed snacks anyway, unquote, getting 1.7 thousand likes. Old School Eddie says, quote, why are brands like Doritos being so self-destructive? Have they learned nothing from Budweiser snafu? Let me guess, their advertising division is headed by a DEI hire, unquote, getting 2.3 thousand likes. Scrolling down more and more. Chris Taylor brings up some of the brands owned by PepsiCo Frito-Lay, which, yeah, this is by no means an expansive list. Perhaps we'll dive into that deeper tomorrow, because, again, they have one of the largest portfolios of products in the food industry, so that's why I'm debating how effective could a boycott be, unless people just overnight became health conscious and started to eat healthy things like raw carrots and other things like that. Now, PepsiCo has obviously Pepsi, Lay's, Gatorade, Tostitos, Quaker, Tropicana, Doritos, Mountain Dew, Cheetos, and dozens of other brands. Now, that small list by Chris Taylor got 477 likes, and he simply said, here you go. Scrolling down. Mahatma Gandhi parody says trans kids groomers get confronted in epic fashion by a reporter who's had enough, unquote, getting 1.1 thousand likes. Mindy Robinson says, quote, time to boycott Doritos for supporting pedophiles. They're unhealthy as shit anyway, unquote, getting 819 likes, which, yes, I can't fathom a single healthy ingredient in a bag of Doritos, or most junk food. There's a reason they're called junk food. Americans used to kind of take that to heart, I think, perhaps more in the past. But, yeah, it's one of those instances where it's definitely a luxury, not a necessity. There's basically nothing you need in the salty snack aisle when you're shopping. I mean, truth be told, You just get some raw vegetables, get some, if you can afford it, maybe some organic produce, get some organic beef, heat it up. Maybe if you feel so inclined to add a little salt, maybe a little pepper. And there you go, you're set for the day. Believe it or not, I've done that a couple times throughout my life. And yes, I am single. Now, going down, you have Brando's saying absolutely delicious, and it's a couple fish, and one of the fish is named Bud Light, and the one fish says, only someone stupid would fall for that. And the little hook line of the fisherman says, men in dresses are good for sales. Then you have the Doritos bag come out of nowhere and go for the hook. I got 883 likes. That's quite a few. Jericho says, quote, they're trying to make pedophilia acceptable to the mainstream, and if Doritos wanted to be a part of it, they live with the consequences. I'm quoting 755 likes, which is quite concerning, the amount of mainstream support that topic has had, culturally speaking. I mean, Netflix famously had one, I think it's called Cuties, that glorified it. And quite concerning is, I would hope more Americans would be united in that, but not so much. Even one of the most popular handles on X Twitter is Gays Against Groomers, and obviously their name is perfect marketing. You know exactly what they stand for. And yet, even they are being boycotted by simply everything from social media platforms, but also marketing apparel companies. I forget the name of the specific branding company. I made sure it wasn't the company that I use for my for my swag and my, where I put my company logos on. But that particular marketing company said they no longer wanted to work with Gays Against Groomers, which I can't think of a single reason to want to stop working with them unless you supported the inverse. Again, they're the marketing company. Their name eludes me at the moment. I just know for sure it's not the one that I utilize. But that is quite concerning. Merrick Garland press office parody account says, who else is fed up? And this little, I forget what little placard you see in front of the bathroom, but it says, raise your hand if you're tired of this shit, getting 554 likes. Planet of Memes, which I don't want to say F- for marketing, but they responded in simple text and not, in fact, a meme. So we'll say this alleged Planet of Memes says, time for the Bud Light treatment, unquote, getting 505 likes. Washington Ghost says, time for them to learn the Bud Light lesson, getting 236 likes. It actually brings up a good point. Let's bring up the Pepsi account, or the Pepsi stock ticker. Look what it did this week. Not astronomical, but it did go down 2.65%, currently trading for $163.52 per share. And they do pay dividends, so they actually do give you an incentive to actually hold your Pepsi stock instead of selling it. Though again, I can't help but think, let me see here. There's also news that a PepsiCo competition ended in 5 tragic deaths this week, and they have posted lower revenue. So again, stock price is a multi-variables on what affects it. So you gotta always be careful when you talk about single variable analysis. But in this case, the stock did go down this week. But I mean, also a couple of major headlines have to do with bad things that are other bad PR things that are not directly correlated to this specific event or this specific brand ambassador. So I'm not sure how much that can be contributed to that. Now, granted, this is going to be a long-term thing as more and more people find out about it, but that's what we see currently for the stock market. Lionhearted says, evil is winning out. People who don't acknowledge that the left is taking Western culture down are complicit or stupid. Democrats, media, corporations are demolishing the ethical and moral purposely annihilating every social norm. Cooking 143 likes. American Archer says, quote, well, Doritos just signed their death certificate. Good luck coming back from this, getting 153 likes. Scrolling down more and more. There has to be some usually there's more contrarian statements. Let's see here. Although it'll be fascinating to see, again, who is going to support this individual when, again, the trans controversy is a big cultural controversy in the United States, but that I think it's maybe 60-40, 50-50 public support as it has kind of devolved into a political issue. But when it comes to the child issue, I want to say an overwhelming majority of adults or Americans would say it's not appropriate to have those types of beliefs around, I can't think of a polite way of saying sexualizing children, but I can't help but I hope that the amount of people who are that mentally, morally vacuous to believe that it is okay to have those types of actions take place are very, very, that the amount of people are very, very small in the United States. So I mean, maybe this will unite the U.S. culturally speaking, though granted, a lot of people say we've never been more divided than ever. Scrolling down, Libercrat Media TM, they say, period, pedos' lives don't matter, getting 388 likes. And interestingly enough, Luke Zaleski, one of our favorite leftists, now granted, we don't, not really favorite, I just follow him because I want some more contrarian statements, and I want, echo chambers get pretty boring pretty quick. Interestingly enough, he has not responded to this, and he's usually pretty quick on the money when it comes to these type of political things. Let's see here. But yeah, it seems as if they just shot themselves in the foot. And again, this is taking place in Spain. However, again, these marketing trends go all over. So another great famous example, which interestingly enough, we saw a little bit of a cultural pushback or a little bit of a boycott. You had Hershey's, which sponsored a trans ambassador in Canada, and they actually came out with these chocolate bars that said Hershey, and they highlighted the different words and did the funny play on words kind of thing. Now, in the United States, you had a brilliant marketing idea from the Daily Wire and Jeremy Boring, where they came out with their own chocolate bars, and they kind of leaned into the whole shtick, where they had their him bar had nuts in it, and the she her does not have nuts. So they probably made a couple million just off that. But I say that it started in Canada with Hershey's, but in U.S. stores a couple months later, they did have those types of bars with that marketing material on it with the pronouns. And I believe some of them did have the trans ambassador on it. I'm trying to remember, because I actually did see it in a store. Granted, anecdotally speaking, I'm in a different country. Well, some might debate it's a different country, but it is technically the state of Texas. Or some people call it Texas. Just doesn't sound as cool calling it or pronouncing it the latter. But nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see if this changes consumer habits. Because again, over 65% of the things in the salty snack aisle are PepsiCo Frito-Lay products. So this is very different than Bud Light in the fact that Bud Light, yes, Anheuser-Busch InBev owned, have 40 plus brands, but they have big competitors, including Coors, Miller Lite, and there are a lot more options in the beer aisle where, again, the competition there is one bag away. Now, if you look at the layout, it is a fascinating retail analytics and how they actually place all the things in the stores. It's very organized to be by the same company, which makes sense. You actually have not Walmart employees taking care of the shelves at Walmart for the salty snack products. You actually have PepsiCo Frito-Lay employees on site packing the products, making sure they're displayed properly, and more often than not, they are next to each other. And it would be interesting to see if, again, Americans have to first find out which brands are also owned by PepsiCo Frito-Lay, which, again, there are so many, that's going to be, maybe I'll make a whole video on that, but that's going to be some education and work they have to do on their hands. They have to educate themselves, which takes time and energy. Or if I boycott salty snack foods altogether, which would be actually would be quite beneficial for your health, then they need to change their lifestyle, which that is one of the most difficult things to do in terms of consumer preferences and adoptions, is changing those long-term habits. If you eat a bag of Doritos every single day, it's going to be quite difficult for you perhaps to actually change away to eating maybe a bag of carrots every day, which I don't want to say obviously, but yeah, obviously that'd be better for your life and your health long-term. So let me know, what do you think is more likely? Do you think consumers will A, switch to a competitive brand, which there are a couple, but very little, or B, do you think consumers will actually shift their health preferences and eat different product categories altogether that are healthier for them? It'd be fascinating to hear, as usual, what you have to say. Other interesting cultural news, you have CNN crying and dying over the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision to allow Trump to be on all 50 ballots for the presidential election. Now, one of the first people to report on this was Colin Rugg over on X Twitter. And let's see here. It's not too long of a clip, so it's only about 44 seconds long. Now, before the clip, he says, quote, "New, CNN is having a pouting session over the Supreme Court's ruling in favor of Trump, saying it's very, quote, unfortunate for America. Good day for America, bad day for propagandists." And then he says, one of their quotes, "Look, unfortunately for America, the court isn't necessarily wrong that this is the way the framers wanted it to be, womp womp," unquote. And without further ado, now, I don't want to give CNN too much credit, but they deserve a modicum of credit only because the men on the show at least suit up, as all men should always, by default, obviously. So they do very, very little right at CNN, but they did suit up, so they did something right. And without further ado, this is a warning for your ears. It may cause your ears to bleed. Just a little disclaimer there, but we'll play a little bit by CNN.
Look, unfortunately for America, the court isn't necessarily wrong that this is the way the framers wanted it to be. They wanted Congress, the people who are closest to their constituents, to be able to make the rules and the laws. That doesn't change the fact that because of gerrymandering in the House and all kinds of other issues, they're not doing their job on a lot of these big issues.
I agree. It's very unlikely, close to impossible that Congress will take action. But this is now a fair question that Manu Raju, Melanese, and owners should be asking members of Congress. Are you willing to pass legislation that would give us rules for how this works? It could only be in the future, by the way.
Kind of the cliche, if we don't win, we have to change the rules. We see this more and more as a theme. Now, I suspect overwhelmingly most people will be roasting, CNN viscerally in the comments because, again, I'm sure they do have an audience, to be sure. Perhaps on par to how many people tune into my show. It's gotten that bad for CNN's ratings. But nevertheless, let's dive in and see what the folks are saying in the comment section. You have Lenka Hauska White saying, quote, wonder what CNN will do after Trump becomes president. Will they be stuck on January 6th, unquote, getting 789 likes? Colin Rugg did respond saying, quote, their ratings will definitely go up. They've probably all been secretly hoping he wins, unquote, getting 705 likes, which, again, you look at how much their viewership dropped after Trump lost. It was a lot. I mean, CNN, more than other companies, most media companies are having layoffs, but even they had astronomical more layoffs than the competition. Because, again, Trump is a media machine. There's so much that they were working with or taking from him in terms of content. They're building content just based on his tweets alone. And everyone's tuning in because it was interesting. So ironically, CNN made a lot of money covering Trump. Now, scrolling down more and more, we have A Music saying, quote, do you agree with Rand Paul? And Rand Paul says, quote, we should never forget the Constitution wasn't written to restrain citizens' behavior. It was written to restrain the government's behavior, unquote, getting 984 likes, which is very true. And I wish more Americans actually knew that and realized that. Now, granted, most Americans also go to public school, and if it's a government-funded school, there's not much incentive for them to teach people, oh, yeah, those rules are actually meant to limit our power, not yours. Yeah, public schools. 32-year low ACD scores, and yet the unions say they deserve more money. Right. Now, scrolling down, we also have Libergat Media TM saying, let the fireworks begin. And there's a bunch of missiles being shot with all the Karens, their faces on it, and this, of course, the cliche gal where when Trump won the election in 2016, this alleged adult woman with short hair and glasses and a beanie and the yellow, like a construction worker vest? F- her marketing and apparel, obviously. But she broke down and cried on her knees because her person lost an election. Now, that got 373 likes. Guidance6 says, quote, how could a unified Supreme Court ever be bad for America? It means that they all agree on the critical aspect of constitutional law. It was a great day for America. Unquote, getting 587 likes, which, yes, is very true. Let me know. I'm actually curious. Let me look on the internet. See here. When was the last time the Supreme Court ruled 9-0? Time Supreme Court ruled 9-0. It's so rare. Let me see here. Let's see here. When was the last one? Let's see. You always contrast. A lot of contradictory data. I'll have to dive into that a little bit later. But yeah, 9-0. Even the most leftist Supreme Court judge, I mean, Sotomayor, even she voted in favor of allowing Trump to have the opportunity to run for presidential office. Even Ketanji Jackson Brown, I mean, she literally, is that her full name? I'm not attempting to be disrespectful. There's some of these names that elude me. Ketanji Jackson Supreme Court. Is that? Oh no, I was like, Kanji. It eluded me at the moment, the exact pronunciation. But even she, who claims to not know what a biological woman is, when they were asking her questions to have her get nominated to the Supreme Court, she said she wasn't a biologist, so she can't possibly know. Even she ruled in favor of Trump's ability to run for presidential office, and it was not an insurrection. Now, Joshua Walker also chimed in saying, quote, the oceans of liberal tears being filled today is glorious. These commies just can't handle losing, unquote, getting 167 likes. And, yep, overwhelming positive responses. But we will cover some contrarian tweets in a New York Minute here or two. So let me know in the comments, do you think this is are you kind of surprised or pleasantly surprised? Are you upset? As always, be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the political part podcast, you have Mark Cuban voted for Nikki Haley in the primary and will vote for Biden over Trump. And he said this publicly. Now, this comes to us thanks to a ex-Twitter account by the name of Republicans Against Trump, which A+ Marketing, you know exactly what they're all about. And they say, quote, new billionaire NBA owner Mark Cuban said he voted for Nikki Haley in the GOP primary in Texas, but would vote for Biden over Trump in November. And Mark Cuban allegedly says, quote, if they were having his last wake and it was him versus Trump and he was being given the last rites, I would still vote for Joe Biden, unquote. And this, as you might say, went viral, getting 2 million views in the first 24 hours and 55,000 likes, which is quite a few to say the least. Now, Mark Cuban has been very famous the past couple months as he has been doubling down on his belief that DEI is great for businesses, although ironically and hypocritically enough, his businesses, they basically have none on the field when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks. In the offices, yes, suspiciously, many of the white employees are no longer there, but the other representations are all present. Now, as for his pharmaceutical company, there's basically no diversity on their board. But, again, rules for thee, but not for me or ye if you're Kanye West. Now, going to the comments, again, it'll be interesting to see because there are a lot of people who do believe in this. There are a lot of people who fervently hate Trump. So I suspect we'll get some contrarian or some different perspectives in the comments. Now, one of the first ones comes from Richard Turner. Disclaimer, has a Canadian flag, also known as a tyrannical flag, in their profile name, which again, there's no freedoms in Canada. There's basically no constitution. That's why they take away their guns, they take away their free speech. You get fined if you even critique the government in Canada. If you say something critical of the little communist Julio Trudeau, or allegedly Justin Trudeau, definitely, totally not the bastard of the Castros, even though he looks basically identical. His mom was a promiscuous woman in Cuba at the time. But nevertheless, he was the one who he admired China. When they asked him, like, who do you admire for, leadership and politics? He said he admired China because of their ability to crack down during the pandemic. That's who's leading Canada and destroying their country. Now, again, Richard Turner from Canada says, quote, great comments and great common sense from a real billionaire, unquote. Real in all caps. Now, that got 2.5 thousand likes. The almost hilarious hypocritical things about Mark Cuban, if you watch Shark Tank, he hates patent laws and fervently doesn't think patents are important. However, the reason he made billions was because of 2 patents that he had when he had broadcast.com or .net, which was a technology where they could actually broadcast, I believe it was sports balls games, which was a very, very unique thing at the time, and they famously sold out to yahoo.com for billions. So even though he's not a big fan of patents or patent law, that is quite literally how he became overwhelmingly successful in life. Going down to Crypto Spring saying, quote, thanks for the transparent, more clarity, hashtag Mark Cuban, when it comes down to principles, it comes down to principles above all else. I got 747 likes. Abbott says, quote, appreciate honesty of Cuban. 2BH, I think he himself would be a great candidate to run for office. I quote, getting 1,000 likes. Winter, pride flag, rose, trans flag says, quote, interesting enough, it's fascinating to see how, culturally speaking, in the United States, the U.S. flag is really hardly present in these bios. It's always the others. But nevertheless, this person or individual says, I've been hearing more of these stories, unquote. Good. Getting 501 likes. Catherine simply says, thank you, Mark, getting 288 likes. And for the record, many of these are authorized or verified ex-Twitter profiles. So, I mean, a lot of people are speculating, what was the age-old? What do they do in China? The dime army or the 10-cent army is a fascinating phenomenon or political strategy where they just, famously, they would give each person like 5 cents per tweet or per post on social media to promulgate their ideals for political speaking. Let's see here. Jill Salmon, USA flag, and then the UK flag, or Great Britain flag, which, what? More or less, mentally vacuous flag, compatibility to flags. But Jill says, same here, Joe can be in a coma, kept alive on life support, and I'd still vote for him, unquote, getting 1.6 thousand likes. Hoof says, Trump to Cuban, hey Mark, I'm seeking $454 million to help pay my legal fees, unquote, getting 546 likes. Let's see here. Adopt Dogs and Tesla says, quote, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, unquote, getting 73 likes. I mean, thus far, it's been overwhelming support for Mark Cuban. Again, maybe that's why he's doing this, because maybe he sees the tide is shifting, or he thinks a majority of Americans believe in Biden over Trump. I mean, scrolling down, someone actually turned, I don't know if this is real, I think it's Photoshop, but it's Mark Cuban with the Biden-Harris t-shirt, but the t-shirt is poorly Photoshopped, so it's not an original t-shirt. But it's just the picture of Mark Cuban saying, quote, I'd vote Biden if he was being given his last rights, unquote, getting 338 likes. And scrolling down more and more. Yeah, just overwhelming support. Now, interestingly enough, Mark Cuban owns like 30 plus businesses. Well, he has a ventured stake in multiple businesses. And again, traditionally in the business world, no one ever speak their opinion. Usually you would keep it to yourself. And, my dad used to always say there's a time and place for everything. And I mean, this one person, Sandy Taylor, says Mark Cuban is my new hero, unquote, getting 28 likes. Interestingly enough, they actually did also tweet the American flag emoji. But again, Mark Cuban owns so many of those companies. And again, by default, just the nature of the United States, you're going to offend about 50% of the prospective and current clients that you have. So again, that's why so many people, traditionally CEOs wouldn't talk about politics. So I'm not sure if this is going to affect the sales of the businesses that Mark Cuban owns. I don't know if people are going to maybe boycott the Mavericks, but it is fascinating to see. I mean, a lot of people are speculating maybe he's going to get into politics. There's been rumors about that for darn over a decade at this point. But let me know, do you think this kind of brand endorsement is going to have more people vote for Biden? Is it going to inspire more people to buy Mark Cuban's products that he owns and represents, that he sells? Or do you think he's just going to alienate a lot of people who, well, some people just don't agree with his political ideals or his political statement. And then you also have some people maybe who are politically in the middle, just don't want to support people based on their politics. So let me know if you think this will actually help Biden in the polls. I mean, that'd be fascinating because, again, Mark Cuban's very famous. He's a billionaire. A lot of people know. A lot of people respect his business acumen because he's built up many companies, done some fantastic things. But as always, let me know in the comments. It'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, you have Vivek on Keith Olbermann calling for the Supreme Court to be dissolved after ruling 9-0 that Trump can in fact be on all 50 state ballots to run for presidential office. Now, again, it's not too surprising. We've seen this trend more and more in United States politics, particularly for people who are leftists. And again, I always make the distinction. I have many liberal friends who, they agree with the Supreme Court decision. And just like how you have people on the far right, you also have people who are on the far left. And a lot of people on the far left is a big theme of, if we lose, that means the game was rigged. It wasn't because we had our policies or prescriptions were not favorable to certain Americans. It wasn't because our messaging wasn't on point or we just didn't have the right methodology to fix a certain problem that Americans want solved. Nope, it's usually, the game is rigged, so we have to change everything and use every power possible to, what's a nice way of saying, fix the game or manipulate it, those things. Now, Vivek is responding. Now, Keith Olbermann originally said, and this got, as the youth may say, went viral, got 10.1 million views in the first 24 hours. So granted, it had a couple days, but this is Keith Olbermann, and he says, quote, the Supreme Court has betrayed democracy. Its members, including Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And collectively, the, quote, court has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate and must be dissolved, unquote. Now, I don't want to say it was hilariously ratioed, but Keith Olbermann of the 10.1 million views only got 10,000 likes. And truth be told, one of the top comments where he was ratioed viscerally, this is at over 2-to-1 ratio, is from the red-headed libertarian who gets an A+ for marketing. She is, in fact, red-headed and a libertarian. She says, quote, dissolve the separation of powers to save democracy, ? I got 26,000 likes. So yes, Keith Olbermann was ratioed, to say the least. And again, who do you think is more apt at actually reading and comprehending documents of the Founding Fathers? A random, and apparently Keith Olbermann is a random sports balls analysis, or someone who their whole life has studied law and actually studied the Constitution, studied those documents. Granted, that's not all the Supreme Court. That is many of the Supreme Court. And again, it was a unanimous decision. I mean, I'm not surprised there are people who are crying and angry at it, but if anything, it should unite Americans because, again, even the farthest leftist people on the Supreme Court agreed. They all came together and they agreed. Now, going to the response from Vivek, let's see here really quick. Now, he responded to Keith Olbermann, and he says, he uses the quote of Keith really quick, saying it must be devolved, and Vivek says, quote, open your eyes to which side is trying to overthrow our republic, unquote. Now, Vivek got 1.2 million views, but unlike Keith, he got 46,000 likes, which is, I know public schools are all-time low for, mathematics, science, history, ACT scores at a 32-year low, and yet they say teachers' unions deserve more money. So that is about 4 times as much, which is astronomical to say the least, considering he got a 10th or 1 out of 10th of Keith's actual views. So Vivek was vindicated, which the fact that, again, I know he's not officially running for president anymore, he dropped out, but I was going to say, how does he not have t-shirts and mugs that say, Vivek vindicates? Something to that effect, and he just talks about, the top 10 bullet points where he's gotten right. Because, truth be told, those bullet points seem to be adding up more and more. Now, yeah, it's quite literally a thing we've talked about earlier where, yes, if you're losing at the game, you want to rewrite the rules. Well, why is it always people, again, you have people on the far right and on the far left. Why is it always the extremists who want to do that? Now, going to the comment section, I suspect most people will be overwhelmingly in support of Vivek, but perhaps there's maybe a contrarian or two. So diving into the comments, you have Paul Zazupa saying, quote, full post since the first it must be dissolved part got cropped in the repost. Keith Olbermann isn't exactly what you call a stable person, so if he's ranting against something, you know that something is probably a good thing. Olbermann is a crybaby. Here's his thing. And that got 125 likes. Phil Rizzo says, quote, the 9-0 SCOTUS ruling in Trump's favor just empowered him. No doubt he can now steal the 2024 election. The 3-point way to stop it is 1, in-day in-person voting, 2, paper ballots hand counted, 3, universal voter ID for citizens. Implement now and secure the 2024 election, unquote, getting 357 likes. Dr. Etiquette says, quote, boy, the Marxist communists are really exposing themselves today, getting 160 likes. Yeah, Burt Macklin saying, quote, at least they aren't talking about expanding the court anymore, getting 56 likes. Which, yes, they aren't, but they're actually talking about dissolving it. Because remember, it seems like only yesterday, but it's a lifetime ago in politics, there's a while where actually Biden was not saying no to just expanding the Supreme Court to quote-unquote pack it, so that way they can have a majority again. Which, again, changing the when you're losing legitimately, changing the rules so you could win. Now, scrolling down, you have a couple more. You have Deep State saying Keith is always good for a laugh, unquote, getting 40 likes. Let's see here. Uncommon Sense says, quote, has anyone noticed in the Matrix that the red pill is opening your eyes, but the blue pill is staying in the Matrix and believing all the propaganda you are fed? Red equals Republicans, blue equals Democrats. The pills are colored correctly, unquote, getting 58 likes. Though the sad part is, or the disappointing part, is that there are a lot of Republicans in name only, which are pejoratively known as rhinos, because they say they're Republican, but then when they get to D.C., they change their votes and they're basically Democrats. Interestingly enough, or interesting how that also only happens in one way. Let's see here. Scrolling down more and more. Elon Musk's Citizen Journalist parody account has a clip from citizenjournals.org. Now, I'm not sure if this is Photoshopped or not, but it says, Supreme shock, SCOTUS 9-0 unites to keep America on ballot. Biden calls for abandoning the Constitution. Quote, getting 14 likes. Aaron says, quote, removing opposition candidates from the ballot isn't a sign of a healthy democracy. It's a sign of fascism. Unquote, getting 17 likes. Which I'm actually surprised there's not more correlations to the Banana Republic somewhere in here. Because that's been trending for quite some time. Scrolling down more and more. Oh, we do have a contrarian statement. Now, granted, only one person liked this, but it is still there. Leanne Carlson says, quote, the Supreme Court has betrayed democracy, unquote. And I suspect they were ratioed, but let's go to the comments. Someone responded with just a clown emoji, and they did ratio them 2-1. Quite literally, the person with the clown emoji got 2 likes. The original statement from Leon saying the court has betrayed democracy got 1 like. So again, it looks like overwhelming support for Vivek's take on this situation. And it'll be fascinating to see, again, how does this affect people in the middle? Because, again, when it comes to politics and moves on the political chessboard, one of the biggest, most important voting constituents are libertarians and people in the middle, who at the end of the day usually do pick a side, which, again, I wish there were more resources and wish there were more options so there could truly be a chance for a libertarian candidate. But it's an instance where you'll have people on the right and you'll have people on the left where, like we said in the, if you're watching the long format show, we talked about the Mark Cuban comments endorsing Biden. There are people who will vote for Biden and vote for Trump no matter what, just because they are a Democrat or they're a Republican. Those votes, you basically just consider those votes locked in. It doesn't matter who's on the ballot, they're just going to vote for that political party. So really, you're really trying to win the hearts and minds of the people who are in that political middle. And it'll be interesting to see how do those people, how do they respond to this court ruling, this decision, and more of these people who are giving their opinion, whether it's Mark Cuban or Vivek Ramaswamy, how do those endorsements or their take on the situation, how does that maybe sway some votes one way or the other? Now, I'd be interested to hear, again, what your experiences are. Do you have some friends where this is kind of opening up their eyes or changing them, or for left or right? Or is this, do you think everything is kind of baked in and people are going to vote how they're going to vote already and this doesn't change? As always, it'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Now going over to the business blunder of the day, you have General Motors to recall about 820,000 trucks because of a tailgate issue, which is one of the most important parts of a General Motors vehicle, considering not more often than not, but it breaks down and you'll probably be sitting on that tailgate waiting for a tow truck for quite some time. Pun not really intended. Now, this is according to David Shepard over at Reuters, and they note that specifically it is 820,000 of their newer pickup trucks. The recall covering manufactured vehicles, model years from 2020 to 2024, with the power unlatching tailgates because water could leak into the exterior tailgate switch and cause a short circuit while parked. Which, again, GM is supposed to have, they supposedly allegedly have proving grounds and going through research, development, and torture testing it to see can it withstand the elements. It rains a fair substantial amount in Michigan. Again, they're headquartered famously in Detroit. I can't fathom how they don't catch that. Now, granted, a lot of the trucks are manufactured in different states, and I believe Texas, because statistically speaking, the highest rates of truck purchases are Oklahoma and Texas. They have some of the highest rates. But how do they not catch this? I mean, of all the vehicles that you're going to leave outside to the elements and not park inside a garage, more often than not, I would suspect that would be a truck. I mean, it's supposed to be a work vehicle going to construction sites and moving hay and funny third thing cliche from a commercial from the 90s. Now, GM said that they are aware of only one reported incident where there was a minor injury and 3 minor property damage complaints related to the issue. So, again, the silver lining, and I always like to say if you squint hard enough in life, you'll find a silver lining in most situations. Now, the silver lining in this situation, it's not one of the key components of the vehicle in regards to, think of the things that cost the most money and that are most important. It's not the engine or the transmission. And it's also not airbags or safety related. So again, it could be a lot worse. This is, a lot of people consider it an accessory. And again, it's not, I would argue it's not life threatening. And thankfully, no one's passed away from this and there hasn't been a major injury. Now, in terms of breakdown of where these trucks located and where they affected, looks like it's going to cover about 570,000 trucks in the United States and 250,000 trucks in Canada, or as some people call it, Canada. Now, they note that the callback is GM's largest U.S. recall of the year and one of the larger recalls filed thus far in 2024. Well, now I was going to say, it's still very early in the year. I can't also suspect, but statistically speaking, there will be even more recalls for GM throughout the year. Now, it looks like U.S. and Canadian regulators say that if the tailgate opens, unsecured cargo could fall out of the bed of the truck and onto the road while moving, which I won't say duh, but yeah, obviously, funny how the government usually will actually spell it out. Now, in terms of what trucks are affected, GM said is working on a quick remedy on the issue, which, okay. They note that the recall will cover 2020 to 2023 Chevy Silverado and GMC Sahara trucks, model years 2020 to 2000, because again, that's the same thing. It's just, they just use different plaques, which in terms of branding, it's actually quite impressive that the GMC brand is so popular with culture and people buying it that when they went bankrupt in 2009, they kept the GMC brand because people loved it so much they kept buying it. Even though mechanically it's the same darn thing as a Chevrolet, I mean, those two trucks are the same assembly line. They just slap on a different logo. But that's perhaps one of the best examples of the power of branding. Now, again, the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sahara are the 2020-2023 model years. Now, the other trucks that are affected are the 2020-2024 heavy-duty versions of the same pickup trucks with the power latching tailgates, or power unlatching tailgates, rather. Now, GM say they opened an investigation in November after receiving complaints of unwanted tailgates opening, and says received 136 complaints that alleged an unwanted tailgate opening. So again, also one of those things where I tend to like a little less technology over more technology in certain applications. It's kind of ironic because I work in tech. But yeah, having a recall of, again, when you look at the General Motors portfolio and most automotive portfolios, one of the most important products, bar none, are trucks and SUVs because they have the most profit margin. There's a reason why most of these companies no longer make affordable or entry-level price, competitively priced compact cars. There's a reason the Chevy Cruze is no longer made anymore, which is a shame because they used to actually come with a manual transmission and, I mean, in a little turbo. Granted, it's for efficiencies, but Chevy Cruze turbo, a little eco. It's called the Chevy Cruze Eco with the stick. With the stick shift, that's my first car. I love that little thing. It's mostly reliable. It's pretty surprising, but again, with those products, that vehicle, there's basically no money in it. They're basically, it's kind of brand recognition that you buy it and they're hoping you fall in love with the brand, and then you buy a Chevy Silverado, or maybe you get a Tahoe or something like that. That there's a lot more profit in it. Now, again, having a recall for your most profitable, most important vehicle you manufacture, especially when they're leaning more into hybrids and EVs, where the losses are high in the beginning of manufacturing, especially with the upfront investment, I gotta say that is certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a thumbs up and thumbs down or a comment is a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.